Hey guys, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Budding Watch Enthusiast. Here on this channel, I review and discuss wristwatches from the perspective of someone who hasn't been collecting for very long. If you guys enjoyed this video, please consider clicking the red subscribe button and ringing the bell icon down below so you never miss when I post a new video. So you guys see the watch box here. It's the beginning of the year. You know what that means. It's time to take a look at the state of the collection for 2020. Talk about the watches that I have in here. Talk about, you know, kind of where they fit into my watch collection. And we're also going to talk about the long-term prospects, because something a friend of mine challenged me to do, Ricardo, over on the Beard of Time podcast, was to get down to 10 watches by the end of the year, and including any new acquisitions that I might happen to make. And I kind of blew it off at first because I'm not one to set, you know, artificial parameters in my collection. But it's an interesting exercise, and there are a few watches in here that don't get worn very frequently. So we'll also kind of talk about, I guess, the permanence that some of the watches might have in my collection as we go along as well. So let's go ahead and get started. 13 watches that we have to look at here today. And before we get into the watches that I currently own, there are two watches from the last State of the Collection video that are not in the collection anymore. Those being the Stratton Synchro Chronograph and the Christopher Ward C60 GMT. Also, over the course of last year, I bought and sold a Damasco DS30, as well as a Bulova Lunar Pilot, the PVD edition. So let's start with the couple digital watches that I own. First of all, my Timex Ironman. I talked about this watch in the past. This was a watch that I owned. It was the very first wristwatch that I ever owned, was this Ironman Triathlon. Now, this is not that exact one. That watch was lost to time. This is one that I acquired online once I started collecting watches again. And again, this is a watch that I love very much. In the Ironman versus G-Shock camp, most folks will generally go for the G-Shock. Definitely the Ironman folks are in the minority, I would say. But I've always been an Ironman guy. And again, that's probably due just to the nostalgia that I have with this watch. This is kind of the watch that I pretty much only wear at this point if I'm doing something where I know it's going to get messy or sweaty or gross, and I just don't care, but I want to have a watch on. So this is like my grass cutting watch. If I'm ever doing any kind of yard work or any kind of, you know, really manual labor, this is usually the one that I'm throwing on. Like I said, it's definitely been worn in a little bit, but still looks to be in pretty good condition. I will never get rid of this Timex Ironman. Again, one of my favorite digital watches. And then a watch that really does not get worn all that often anymore, and that is the Casio World Timer. I think I had it on a bracelet last year. I've since put it on a NATO strap, which I like a lot more because the bracelet in this watch, of course, as you'd expect from a $40 watch, not the greatest in the entire world. But yeah, like I said, I still enjoy owning this watch, even though I don't wear it. Obviously, I didn't spend hardly anything on it, so, you know, selling it or getting rid of it just seems kind of a waste of time. I did see a Random Rob mod that he did on his version of this, which I may possibly look into, maybe do something fun with it, because again, this just does not get worn all that frequently. I don't often find an occasion to wear it, though I might actually here coming up soon for reasons that I won't get into in this video, but possibly in a later one down the road. So we'll see. But again, I still love the look of the watch. And again, it does remind me of the Seiko. I think it's the G155 that Roger Moore wore in Octopussy. Being a big James Bond fan, that was reason enough for me to acquire this watch for sure. See, the Casio World Time doesn't see the wrist, but it's also not probably going anywhere. So for the rest of the collection, we can pretty much go in order of acquisition. So first, we're going to take a look at a watch that you guys have heard me talk about so much over the years. That is the Sal Baltimore Founders Edition, of course, the first mechanical watch that I have ever owned. A watch that, again, because of that reason alone, would never leave my collection. But I do love this watch. It doesn't see very much wrist time anymore. Always very much new hotness for me. Typically, that seems to be the way that I'm trending. But I do love this watch. It usually gets worn at least once or twice a month. And every time I put it on my wrist, I remember why I fell in love with it in the first place. So again, Sal Baltimore Founders Edition, to me, still one of the most underrated watches that is out there. And a watch that I just still absolutely love. Again, if you're unfamiliar with this watch, go back into my videos, check out my review, and kind of like my 6 months later review on this watch to understand why I have such fond feelings for it. And again, I probably should mention that every watch in this video, with the exception, I think, of a slight couple, I have reviewed on the channel before. So if you're interested in learning more about any of these, definitely go back and check my video archives, I guess, to see the reviews on all the watches that you see here today. Next up, the Seiko SKX 007. Something that is not too terribly surprising to find in the watch box of almost any watch enthusiast. This is, again, another one that falls into the camp of it does not get worn very frequently at all. But I also, it's not really worth selling just because, I paid so little for it in the first place, and the value that you get for it now is not really that high. Now, I will say, just from a pure aesthetic standpoint, I still definitely prefer the SKX to the new Seiko 5 kind of SKX variants that have rolled out recently. There's just something about this design that just kind of feels as classic as a watch like this can. But again, this would be probably the first candidate that we've seen so far that might not stay long-term in the collection. We will see, because it's kind of been made redundant in some ways by some of the other watches that I own currently. You see it here on this Mora watch strap's NATO strap, which is kind of where it's been living for the last little while. I, of course, never used the rubber strap that this watch came with because it is terrible. But yeah, the SKX, like I said, a classic, a staple in the collection of many watch enthusiasts, but we'll see if it makes it to 2021. Now, this is one of the other ones you'll see in the collection that I've never reviewed, that I've owned for almost 2 years now, the Seiko 5 SNK variant. Again, it just doesn't get very much wrist time. Part of that is the size of the watch. It's a little small for the size of watch that I typically wear. Again, part of that is because if I'm grabbing like a field style watch or like an everyday beater style watch, I'm usually reaching for the Hamilton khaki field that you guys are going to see next. My wife actually bought the blue variant of this. I may end up giving this to her at some point because I have a feeling that she will wear it a lot more frequently than I will. I still like the design of the Seiko 5. Again, I love the pilot's style dial with the minute numerals that run along the outside. The fact that there is a 7S26 movement inside of this is insane value for money proposition. I think I bought this watch for less than $50 when I picked it up a couple of years ago. But again, it's just not something that gets worn very regularly by me. I wouldn't even say I wear it irregularly. I've probably worn this watch a total of 5 times in the total of 2 years that I've owned it. But again, one of those watches that when you look at sale value, there's really no sense in moving it on. It's more fun to kind of keep it and even admire it without being worn, considering how little that I would get in a sale for it. So yeah, Seiko 5, not too much to say just because it's not a watch that finds itself on my wrist very often. So up next, the Hamilton Khaki Field Day Date Automatic, a watch that I have to say, of every watch in my collection, I don't think that my appreciation has grown more for a watch than it's grown for this particular watch in the last 2 years. This is a watch that I've often thought about parting ways with, that I've often thought about selling. And then every time that I think about that, I end up pulling it out of the watch box. I end up wearing it for a couple of days. And when I say a couple of days, it's because as soon as I put it on my wrist, it doesn't leave my wrist for at least a couple of days. I fall in love with the watch all over again. Again, just a fantastic watch. It does the field watch aesthetic, in my opinion, perfectly. Still love the split day date. I've pretty recently since given up thinking about moving on from this watch because, again, I don't know what it is. It just, every time I put it on, I remember why I fell in love with the watch in the first place. If you guys see, zoom in here, it's a little hard to see because the bezel's polished, so it's hard to see the nicks and scratches it's picked up. I'm super proud of all of the, not damage, but all of the character that this watch has built over that I own. This is definitely my go-to if I want to be wearing an automatic, but I need something that I don't mind getting kicked around a little bit. The Hamilton is where I go. Again, just a fantastic watch. I think that this model in particular, this reference in particular, is again an extremely underrated watch. It's not really pointed at when you talk about the Hamilton khaki line very frequently, but for my money, it's the best one that's out there. So yeah, Hamilton Khaki Field Day Date Automatic. Again, I would implore you to go check out my previous reviews on this watch as well. So next we have the Christopher Ward C65 Trident Diver, a watch that I can actually definitively say you will not see when we do this review of the collection next year. I've already made up my mind to sell this watch because of another watch that you'll see later in the collection that I wear much more frequently. But this watch still holds a very special place in my heart. This was the first watch from, I guess you could say, an established brand that I ever kind of went new release chasing. This was the first watch that, you know, stopped me in my tracks when I saw it online, that I saved up for, you know, that I planned out a purchase of. And then I've had some really fun experiences with. It's still an amazing value. It's still an excellent pickup. I'm hoping that, you know, this watch is going to make another watch enthusiast incredibly happy when I do move it on somewhere else. Again, it just doesn't get worn often by me because of another Christopher Ward watch that is in the collection. But I still have very strong feelings of love for this watch just because of its kind of place in my personal watch history. But enjoy seeing it on the channel here. This is probably the last time that it's going to make an appearance here on the Budding Watch Enthusiast on camera, because I am getting ready to list it for sale very soon. So yeah, the Christopher Ward C65 Trident Diver. Safe travels, my friend, whenever I do end up selling this. And again, just a very important watch in my personal growth as a watch collector. Now, this is the last watch that I do believe was in the collection when I did last year's video. I think I had just acquired the NTH Neck and Renegade when I filmed last year's State of the Collection. So this is the first repeat viewing of this watch for this video. And let me tell you something. This is easily my favorite Microbrand diver that I own in my collection right now. This goes with anything. This, probably more than any other watch in my collection, is the watch that when I'm grabbing something to wear and I'm not really sure which watch I want to wear that day, and I just grab the first thing that comes to mind, this is usually the one that I'm pulling out of the watch box more often than not, just because, again, since you have that gradient dial, it goes with pretty much anything, because you get the benefit of having black and blue on this watch as well. Again, the size of the watch, fantastic. Works very well with anything. It's sporty enough to wear casually. It's not sporty enough that it looks wildly out of place if you're wearing it in a setting that's a little bit more formal. Goes with pretty much every strap that I own for the most part. I've even warmed on the bracelet a little bit. It's still not my favorite bracelet in the entire world. Far from it, but I have caught myself wearing this on its bracelet more often than when I first acquired the watch as well. But again, love the NTH subline. This is my favorite of a line that I love very much. So yeah, NTH Neck and Renegade. This is never leaving the collection, never ever. I'm gonna own this watch for as long as I'm into collecting watches, and hopefully pass it down the road at some point as well. Fantastic watch that, again, if you are not familiar with NTH subs, go back, watch my review, and get familiar, because they are one of my favorite brands out there. Yes, so next up, the watch that I guess I'd have to consider the current crown jewel of my collection, the Monta SkyQuest. This is the watch that, in my opinion, is my first luxury watch that I purchased. You guys know, if you watched the review of this watch, this is one that I thought about long and hard, that I did copious amounts of research, had to see it in person to really appreciate it, but man, do I still love this watch a ton. I'm not going to say too much about it here, because I do actually plan on filming a kind of 1 year later review of the SkyQuest, because I'm coming up on a year of ownership with this watch. But again, just a fantastic watch, one of the best value for money brands that currently exist, especially in the Microbrand space out there today. Is Monta. They've come out with a new line of watches since then as well that is also excellent. So look forward to more on the SkyQuest. Again, the 1 year later review is coming. If you want to learn more now, again, go check out the review of this watch that I did last February, or was it March? It was somewhere around that time. But yeah, the SkyQuest, again, this is the kind of the primo watch in the entire collection as it stands right now. So while the SkyQuest might be the best watch in my collection, I think if I had to pick a watch that just from makes me smile whenever I put it on my wrist, kind of just my emotional favorite watch in the collection, it's the Nodus Avalon. I can't explain why I adore this watch as much as I do. But yeah, the Avalon, just a fantastic diver from a company whose watches that I've really grown to appreciate and admire, again, for delivering great quality, great value. A part of it, I think, is definitely the color. The color on the dial, a blue that you don't quite see on too many other watches out there. Love the matte ceramic bezel in here as well. This watch, like, I've grown more, drawn to the turtle style dive watch case. Every time I go to buy like a Seiko Turtle, or every time I go to buy like a Seiko Marine Master, I end up wearing this watch a couple days later and then remember that I probably don't need to own either of those things, because this watch just kind of scratches that itch for me in a way that watch probably can't. So again, the Nodus Avalon, fantastic watch. Looking to possibly add a Nodus sector to the collection sometime soon. Every time I see them on Instagram, my eyes keep wandering over there. So you guys will see, I guess, sooner rather than later if that ends up coming to fruition. But yeah, absolutely love the Avalon. It's picked up, let me see if I can zoom in so you guys can see it here. It's picked up a pretty gnarly scar from the bottom of a pool this summer when me and the fam went to the beach on the side of the bezel. I can't decide if I want to try to do anything about it or not, because again, I like the fact that the watch does pick up character, but it's literally like the only blemish that you can see on the watch, so that kind of bothers me a little bit too. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, Nodus Avalon, I love it. And again, a watch that you can check out my thoughts on more in my review. So up next, the reason why I am perfectly happy to sell my regular Christopher Ward C65 Trident Diver is because I picked up the Christopher Ward C65 GMT, and this watch basically took all the wrist time that the old Trident Diver was getting. Again, I'm not going to go on too terribly much about this watch because not only have I reviewed it, but the last video that I posted before this one was talking about how, of any watch in my collection, the C65 GMT is the only one that I see that could be my one watch collection if I had to ever go down to a one watch collection. So I talk about the reasons why and why I love this watch so much and why it works so well for me. Again, to me, this is the crown jewel of the Christopher Ward Trident lineup. Even with the new C60s that came out last year, for my money, the C65 GMT, the Pepsi bezel here specifically, is the single best watch in the Christopher Ward lineup. And I don't see that opinion changing in my eyes anytime soon. Next is arguably one of the more fun watches in my collection. This is a watch that I would have never probably bought on my own until I happened to get one in for review. That I reviewed the EMG Nemo, the HCAD Nemo, over on Watch With Us. And once I got rid of it, I could not stop thinking about this watch. And again, just an incredibly fun watch to have in the collection. The yellow dial, very playful. Of course, you see the mint green chapter ring running along the outside there. Really fun modern take on sort of like a retro diver of sorts. But here's the thing, I don't find myself wearing this that frequently. Now, that might be because we're here in the winter months, and obviously you can see the dial color not really conducive to a winter wardrobe. So I'm gonna give this watch till spring and summer, see how much it finds its way onto my wrist. I don't know if it's gonna be here for the long haul in the collection. This is one of those ones that might be sacrificed at the altar of something else that comes along. But again, I still really do enjoy this watch. And again, the thing I mentioned when I did the review, the thing that really impressed me about this watch is that the quality of the watch is not apparent from pictures and from video. Like, it's one of those watches you really have to get in your hand to appreciate how well built and how well designed the watch is. But yeah, the EMG HCAD Nemo, one of the more recent additions to the collection, and one that we'll see how long it sticks around. And last but not least, the most recent addition to the collection, the only watch in the watch box that I haven't reviewed besides the Seiko 5, just because it's still a little too new, the EC Anderson Calypso Sports. Review coming soon for this one, so look out for that in the next couple weeks. So far, though, I have been enjoying my time with this watch. Again, as you can see from the watches you've seen before, this occupies a pretty unique space within my collection, not quite like anything else that's in there. So I'll have more thoughts to share on this watch when we do get to the full review coming soon in the next couple of weeks. But for now, I can tell you guys that I've been certainly enjoying my time with the E.C. Anderson Calypso Sport in the few weeks that I've had it so far. About a month in the collection so far for the E.C. Anderson. So guys, there you have it, my current watch collection. You guys can see the state of things as it sits right now. I know in a future video within the next couple of weeks here, I'm going to be going over some watches that I'm considering purchasing in 2020. So again, we'll see that if I stick to this quest to get down to 10 watches by the end of the year. So yeah, when we get around to doing State of the Collection 2021, it'll be very interesting to see which watches are still around and which watches have moved on to new homes. So you guys will have to stay tuned for that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, click the thumb down below. If you guys loved it, click the red subscribe button and ring the bell icon. That way you'll never miss a new episode that I post. Thank you guys again very much for watching, and I will see you all the next time.